In the heart of Lagos, where skyscrapers kiss the clouds and wealth flows like the rivers of our ancestors, there lived a man named Chukwuemeka Okafor, but everyone just called him Emeka. At 32 years old, Emeka had everything a man could possibly want. His tech company had revolutionized mobile banking across West Africa, making him one of the youngest billionaires on the continent. His face graced magazine covers from Johannesburg to Cairo. Women threw themselves at him at every charity gala, every business summit, every exclusive party in Victoria Island. But Emeka had a problem that all his billions couldn't solve. He was utterly, completely, devastatingly alone. You see, Emeka had loved once. Her name was Kioma, and she was a simple girl from his village in Enugu. They met when he was still hustling, still selling phone accessories from a wooden table in Computer Village. She loved him when he had nothing but dreams and a borrowed laptop. But then the money came, fast and furious like Harmattan winds. The company exploded. The investors came calling. And Kioma, sweet Kioma, she couldn't handle it. The society women mocked her village accent. The blogs called her a gold digger. The pressure crushed her, and one day she left. Just like that. A note on his kitchen counter that said, "This world is not for me." That was 5 years ago, and Emeka hadn't trusted anyone since. Now, every woman who approached him saw only one thing: the private jets, the mansion in Banana Island, the fleet of luxury cars, the platinum credit cards. They saw the money, never the man. They laughed at his jokes a little too hard. They agreed with everything he said. They wore their most expensive designer dresses and spoke in practiced tones, performing the role of billionaire's girlfriend before they even knew his middle name. It disgusted him. It exhausted him. And late at night, in his 12-bedroom mansion surrounded by security guards and surveillance cameras, Emeka felt more trapped than the poorest man in the slums of Agegunal. One evening, after another tedious charity dinner where 3 different women had slipped their numbers into his pocket, Emeka stood on his balcony overlooking the Lagos Lagoon. The city lights twinkled like stars that had fallen to earth. His best friend Tund joined him with 2 glasses of cognac. Tund was the only person from the old days who had stayed loyal, who had remained real. He worked as Emeka's head of security now, but really he was the brother Emeka never had. "You look like a man planning something foolish," Tund said, handing him a glass. Emeka smiled, that dangerous smile that Tund had learned to recognize over the years. "What if I told you I want to disappear? Not forever, just for a while. I want to be nobody. I want to walk through Lagos and have people see me, actually see me, not my bank account." Tund laughed, but it died when he saw Emeka wasn't joking. "You're serious. Brother, what are you planning?" Emeka turned to face him, and in the city lights his eyes gleamed with determination. "I'm going to pretend to be blind. I'll move to a different part of the city, somewhere simple. I'll meet people as just another man struggling to survive. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find someone who can love me for who I am, not what I have." Tund nearly dropped his glass. "Emeka, that's madness. That's actually insane. Do you know how offensive that is? How dangerous? What if you're exposed?" But Emeka had already made up his mind. When Emeka decided something, the gods themselves couldn't change his course. Within 2 weeks, the plan was in motion. Emeka publicly announced he was taking a sabbatical to find himself and would be traveling abroad for 6 months. The business magazines speculated. His board of directors worried. But Emeka didn't care. He had rent a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Surulere, a middle-class neighborhood far from the opulence of his usual haunts. He bought simple clothes from Yaba Market. He got dark sunglasses. He practiced walking with a white cane that Tund procured from a medical supply store. And he studied. He watched videos, read accounts, learned everything he could about living with visual impairment, about the challenges and the strengths, always reminding himself this was temporary. This was just to find truth in a world of lies. The day Emeka moved into his new life, he felt more alive than he had in years. The apartment was small, nothing like his mansion. It had 2 bedrooms, a cramped living room, a kitchen with outdated appliances, and neighbors whose conversations bled through thin walls. It was perfect. Tund, who lived in the 2nd bedroom to keep watch over his crazy friend, shook his head constantly. I still think this is the most foolish thing you've ever done, and you once tried to eat 6 wraps of fufu in one sitting." Emeka laughed, the first genuine laugh in months. "Trust me, brother, something good will come from this. I can feel it." The next morning, Emeka stepped out into his new world. He wore faded jeans, a plain t-shirt, and his dark glasses. The white cane tapped against the concrete as he made his way down the stairs. His heart pounded. What if someone recognized him? What if he failed? What if he couldn't pull this off? But then a woman's voice cut through his anxiety, warm and concerned like his mother's embrace. "Easy now, take your time. The last step is a bit high." Emeka looked up, though his glasses hid his eyes, and there she stood. She was beautiful, not in the polished, magazine cover way he was used to, but in a real, earthy way that made his breath catch. Her skin was the color of cocoa, rich and smooth. Her hair was braided in simple cornrows. She wore a nurse's uniform, slightly rumpled like she just finished a long shift. Her eyes held kindness, genuine and unguarded. No calculation, no performance, just human compassion. "Thank you," Emeka said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm still getting used to the new place." She smiled, and it was like sunrise over Lagos Lagoon. "You just moved in. I'm on the 3rd floor, been here for 2 years. I'm Amara." She extended her hand, then laughed at herself. "Sorry, habit. I work at the General Hospital. I'm always shaking hands." Emeka reached out, finding her hand. It was warm, strong, the hand of someone who worked hard for everything they had. "I'm Emeka. And don't apologize. I may not see, but I appreciate the gesture all the same." They stood there for a moment, connected by that simple handshake, and Emeka felt something shift in his chest, something he hadn't felt since Kioma. Hope. Over the following weeks, Emeka and Amara developed a friendship that felt as natural as breathing. She worked long shifts at the hospital, 12, sometimes 14 hours caring for patients who couldn't afford expensive private clinics. She came from IMO State, had put herself through nursing school selling pure water in traffic, had sent money home to help her younger siblings finish secondary school. She lived on a budget so tight it would make Emeka's accountants weep, but she never complained. She helped Emeka navigate the neighborhood, showed him where the best buka served the tastiest jollof rice, where the pepper soup spot stayed open late, which bus routes were safe. She never asked for anything in return. She helped because it was who she was, because kindness was her default setting in a world that often rewarded cruelty. Emeka found himself falling, slowly at first, then all at once. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the stuff of Nollywood movies with their dramatic music and rain-soaked confessions. It was simpler than that and somehow more profound. It was the way she laughed at his jokes, really laughed, not the practiced titters he was used to. It was how she argued with him about football, passionately defending her beloved Arsenal while he championed Chelsea, their debates lasting hours over bottles of malt drink. It was how she read the newspaper to him every morning, her voice stumbling over complicated political terms, adding her own colorful commentary that was far more entertaining than the actual news. It was the way she touched his arm when she spoke, casual and unself-conscious, treating him like a person, not a project or a prize. One Saturday evening, they sat on the balcony of Emeka's apartment, sharing a plate of fried plantain and pepper sauce that Amara had made. The Lagos sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, and even though Emeka was supposed to be blind, he found himself stealing glances at her when she wasn't looking, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled. "You know," Amara said, her voice soft in the evening air, "I'm glad you moved here. It gets lonely sometimes, this city. Everyone's so busy chasing money, chasing success. Nobody has time for real friendship anymore." Emeka's chest tightened with guilt. If only she knew the truth. "What about you?" he asked, deflecting. "No boyfriend waiting to steal you away from our plantain sessions." Amara laughed, but there was a sadness in it. Men in Lagos want 3 things: a beautiful woman who looks good on their arm, a submissive woman who won't challenge them, and a woman who doesn't need them for money so they can feel like big men. I'm too dark for the first, too opinionated for the second, and too broke for the third. Emeka's hand found hers and he squeezed it. "Then those men are fools. You're perfect exactly as you are." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken feelings. Amara squeezed back, and Emeka knew right then that this was real. This was what he'd been searching for. This was love without conditions, without pretense, without the contamination of wealth and status. But reality has a way of crashing parties, and Emeka's came in the form of his mother. Mama Akafor was a force of nature, a woman who had single-handedly raised 3 children after Emeka's father died, who had built her own textile business from nothing, who commanded respect in rooms full of men who thought women should be silent. She called Tund, demanding to know where her son was really hiding. Tund, who could face down armed robbers without flinching, crumbled under Mama Akafor's questioning like akara in hot oil. Within 24 hours, she was at the door of the Suruler apartment, her driver and 2 of her church sisters in tow. Tund tried to stop her. "Mama, please, just call him first, let him explain." But Mama Akafor pushed past him like he was made of air. She found Emeka in his room, and the sight stopped her cold. Her brilliant son, her pride and joy, wearing dark glasses and sitting in a modest room that could fit inside his master bathroom back home. "Chukwu Emeka," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "What have you done to yourself?" Emeka stood, removing his glasses, and for the first time in weeks he looked at the world with his own eyes, unfiltered. "Mama, I can explain." The explanation took 2 hours. His mother sat in stunned silence as he poured out everything: the loneliness, the fake relationships, the desperate need to find something real, Kioma's departure and how it had broken something in him, and finally Amara. How she had unknowingly healed him piece by piece with her genuine spirit and unguarded heart. When he finished, Mama Akafor was crying, tears rolling down her cheeks unchecked. My son, I raised you to be strong, to be successful. But I never taught you that it was okay to be vulnerable, to be hurt. I'm sorry." She pulled him into her arms, and Emeka, the billionaire, the tech genius, the man who commanded boardrooms, cried in his mother's embrace like he was 10 years old again. But then Mama Akafor pulled back, her expression hardening with a mother's wisdom. "But this deception, Emeka, this lie, when that girl finds out, and she will find out, it will destroy her. The very thing you're running from, dishonesty, that's what you're giving her. You think you're different from those women who pretended to love you for money. You're pretending too, just in a different way." Her words hit Emeka like a thunderbolt. She was right. God help him, she was absolutely right. He had been so focused on finding authenticity that he'd become the very thing he despised: a liar, a pretender, a performer playing a role. The guilt crushed him, made it hard to breathe. That night Emeka couldn't sleep. He paced his small room, his mind racing. He had to tell Amara the truth. But how? How do you tell someone that everything they know about you is a lie? That the struggling, disabled man they've been helping is actually one of the richest men in the country? That their entire friendship was built on deception? He knew what would happen. She would hate him, she would never forgive him, and he would lose the best thing that had happened to him in 5 years. But the alternative was worse. Living a lie forever, always looking over his shoulder, never really knowing if what they had was real. The decision was made for him 2 days later. Amara came to his door, and Emeka knew immediately something was wrong. Her eyes were red from crying. Her hands shook as she held up her phone. "Emeka," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I need you to tell me something, and I need you to tell me the truth." Emeka's heart stopped. Anything. She turned her phone screen toward him, though he was supposedly blind, and there it was, a photo from a business magazine. Chukwu Emeka Akafor, billionaire tech mogul, at a gala 3 months ago. The headline read, "Where is Nigeria's youngest billionaire?" One of her colleagues at the hospital had seen Emeka at a pharmacy, had recognized him, had shown Amara the article. "You can see," she said, her voice breaking. "You can see, can't you? And you're him, you're that billionaire. Everything was a lie." Emeka reached for her, but she stepped back like he was poisonous. "Amara, please, let me explain." "Explain?" Her voice rose, pain turning to anger. "Explain what? That you've been mocking me this whole time. That while I was helping you, pitying you, caring for you, you were playing some kind of sick game. Did you laugh at me, Emeka? When I read you the newspaper, when I helped you cross the street, when I cooked for you with the little money I have, did you laugh?" "No." Emeka's voice cracked. "No, never, Amara, everything between us was real. My feelings for you are real. I needed to find someone who could love me for me, not for my money." Amara stared at him like she didn't know him at all. "Love you for you? You don't even know who you are. You're playing dress-up with other people's struggles. You're treating blindness like it's a costume you can put on and take off. Do you know how insulting that is? Do you know how many people actually struggle every day with disabilities, with poverty, with things you used as props for your little experiment?" Each word was a knife, and Emeka bled with every one. "You're right," he whispered. "You're absolutely right. I was selfish. I was wrong. But my feelings for you, those were never fake." Amara wiped her tears, straightening her spine. "I don't care about your feelings. I care that you lied to me. I care that everything I thought I knew was false. I care that I was falling in love with someone who doesn't even exist." The words hung in the air. She was falling in love with him. Despite everything, that truth was there, raw and painful. "He does exist," Emeka said desperately. "The man you know, that's me. That's who I am without all the noise. The real me is the one who ate plantain on your balcony, who argued about football, who listened to you talk about your day. That's real, Amara. That's the truth." But she was already shaking her head, already backing away. "I don't know what's real anymore, and I don't know if I want to. Stay away from me, Emeka, or Chukwumeka, or whoever you really are." She turned and walked away, and Emeka let her go. What else could he do? He had no right to chase her, to demand forgiveness. He had done this. He had destroyed the best thing in his life with his own hands. The next week was the darkest of Emeka's life, darker than when his father died, darker than when Kioma left, darker than any business failure or public criticism. He moved back to his mansion, but it felt emptier than ever. He tried to lose himself in work, but every spreadsheet, every meeting, every decision felt hollow. Tun tried to console him. "Brother, give her time. Maybe she'll come around." But Emeka knew better. He had seen the betrayal in her eyes, the death of trust. Some things once broken can't be fixed. Then 3 weeks after their last conversation, something happened that changed everything. Emeka was in his office, staring blankly at his computer screen when Tun burst in without knocking. "Turn on the news, now." Emeka grabbed the remote, flipping to the local news channel, and his blood ran cold. There had been a fire at Lagos General Hospital. The building was engulfed in flames. Dozens of people were trapped inside, nurses, doctors, patients, and the reporter was listing names of those unaccounted for. Amara Nwasu was one of them. Emeka didn't think. He just moved. He ran to his car, Tun barely keeping up. They raced through Lagos traffic, Emeka's driver weaving through cars like they were standing still. Police had cordoned off the area, but Emeka didn't care. He jumped out of the car before it fully stopped and ran toward the flames. Officers tried to stop him. "Sir, you can't go in there." But Emeka was beyond reason. He had lost Amara once through his own stupidity. He would not lose her to fire. Tun grabbed his arm. "Emeka, don't be foolish. You'll die in there." Emeka turned to his friend, and Tun saw something in his eyes he'd never seen before: absolute determination. "Then I die, but I won't stand here and do nothing." He broke free and ran toward the building. The heat was overwhelming, like the breath of demons. Smoke filled his lungs. He could barely see, could barely breathe. And then Emeka understood, truly understood, what it meant to move through the world without sight. He navigated by sound, by touch, by instinct. He called Amara's name over and over, his voice hoarse. Through the crackling flames, through the chaos, he heard it, a weak voice. "Here, I'm here." He found her in a corridor, pinned under a fallen beam. 2 other nurses were with her, one unconscious, the other struggling to free Amara. Emeka didn't hesitate. He grabbed the beam, and the heat of it seared his hands, the pain excruciating. But he lifted. He lifted with strength he didn't know he had, lifted with the power of love and desperation and sheer stubborn will. The beam moved. The nurses scrambled free. Emeka grabbed Amara, lifting her into his arms. She looked at him through the smoke and flames, and in her eyes he saw recognition. Not just of his face, but of his heart. "You came," she whispered. He said, "I would walk through 1,000 fires." He carried her out, the ceiling collapsing behind them, the world a nightmare of heat and destruction. Firefighters grabbed them at the entrance, pulling them to safety. Paramedics swarmed them, checking for injuries. Emeka's hands were badly burned. Amara had smoke inhalation and a broken leg, but they were alive. They were alive. In the ambulance, as paramedics worked on them, Amara reached for Emeka's bandaged hand. "You didn't have to do that. You could have died. Emeka smiled through his pain. I told you once that my feelings for you were real. I meant it. Everything else was a lie, but that truth that was always there. Tears streamed down Amara's soot-covered face. You're an idiot, a rich, foolish, beautiful idiot. Does this mean you'll forgive me? She laughed, then winced at the pain. It means I'll think about it, after you grovel, a lot. Recovery was long. Emeka's hands needed surgery and months of physical therapy. Amara's leg required pins and weeks in a cast, but they went through it together. Emeka told her everything, the real story of his life, the poverty of his childhood, the struggle to build his business, the loss of his father, his first love and how she left, his loneliness in a world of luxury, and his foolish, misguided plan to find authenticity through deception. Amara listened to all of it, and slowly, painfully, she began to understand, not to excuse but to understand. And understanding led to forgiveness. Forgiveness led to rebuilding. Rebuilding led to something stronger than what they'd had before, because it was built on complete truth. 6 months later, on a beach in Badagry where the Atlantic Ocean kissed African soil, Emeka asked Amara to marry him. Not at some fancy resort, not with photographers and society pages waiting to document the moment. Just them, the sand, the waves, and the setting sun painting the sky in colors that seemed designed by the ancestors themselves. He knelt in the sand, his scarred hands holding a simple ring, not the massive diamond his wealth could afford, but a modest band they had chosen together. Amara Nwasu, I came into your life as a lie, but I want to spend the rest of my life being nothing but honest with you. Will you marry me? She pulled him to his feet, her eyes shining with tears and joy and love so pure it hurt to witness. Emeka Okafor, you're still an idiot, but you're my idiot. Yes, I'll marry you. They married 3 months later in a ceremony that scandalized Lagos high society. It wasn't in a 5-star hotel. It was in Emeka's village in Enugu, with the entire community invited. Amara wore traditional George wrapper, her beauty natural and unenhanced. They fed 500 people, not with fancy catering, but with jollof rice and goat meat and fufu cooked by the village women in massive pots over open fires. Politicians and business moguls sat next to farmers and traders, all equal under the sun, all celebrating love that transcended class and status. Mama Okafor cried through the entire ceremony, tears of joy and relief that her son had finally found his way home. And as Emeka and Amara danced their first dance, not to a live band or a DJ, but to an old highlife record played on crackling speakers, Emeka realized something profound. He had spent years building wealth, accumulating success, reaching for a happiness he thought money could buy. But true wealth wasn't in his bank accounts or his properties or his business empire. True wealth was in the woman in his arms who had loved him at his worst and had chosen to stay. True wealth was in truth, in vulnerability, in being brave enough to be completely known and loved anyway. Years later, people would tell the story of Chukwuemeka Okafor, the billionaire who pretended to be blind to find love. Some called it romantic. Some called it problematic. Some called it the craziest thing they'd ever heard. But Emeka and Amara didn't care about the labels. They knew their truth. Love isn't about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It's not about wealth or status or playing roles. It's about finding someone who sees you, really sees you, in all your broken, beautiful humanity and choosing to love you anyway. It's about being brave enough to show up authentically, even when it's terrifying. It's about forgiveness and grace and second chances. And sometimes it's about walking through fire, literally and metaphorically, for the person who makes your life worth living. The money was still there, of course. Emeka was still a billionaire, but now he used it differently. He funded programs for people with disabilities. He built affordable housing in neighborhoods like Surulere. He and Amara started a foundation that trained nurses from poor communities, giving others the opportunities Amara had fought so hard for. The mansion in Banana Island became a shelter for abused women. The private jets flew doctors to remote villages. The wealth that had once isolated him became a tool for connection, for healing, for change. And on quiet evenings, when the Lagos sun set in its eternal glory, Emeka and Amara would sit on their modest balcony, not in the mansion, but in an apartment they kept in Surulere and share fried plantain and pepper sauce and talk about their day and laugh at inside jokes nobody else would understand. And Emeka would look at his wife, this beautiful, strong, brilliant woman who had saved him in ways she would never fully comprehend, and he would thank God and the ancestors and every force in the universe that he had been foolish enough, brave enough, desperate enough to walk through the world as someone else so he could finally learn to be himself.